Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ball Up Top, your weekly women's basketball podcast from No Cap Space. It's been a pretty eventful week. We had a whole new league. We had some big-time matchups. We had some WNBA free agency news. Andrew, we got a lot to get into today. Tyler and Andrew here holding it down for you again this week. But before we get into it, let me tell you about our friends at Home Field. Using code NOCAT15. March Madness is on the way. You can use code NOCAT15 and get 15% off your first order with our friends at Home Field. Look, you're going to want to get ready for March Madness with their gear. They're the absolute best. And I mean that when I say it. Again, a lot of stuff has gone down, but I think the most fun place to start is with I think the most recent news that we've gotten is that we talked about this. Yes, we talked about this last week. But now officially, Chennedy Carter will be an unrestricted free agent and has not received a qualifying offer any possible from the Chicago Sun-Times. Like, I mean, if you're a WNBA fan, you've probably seen a report or two from her already. But frankly, a lot of information about what is going down, what has gone down with the Chicago Sky within this article, and getting a little bit of insight into the decision-making. Because frankly, it was confusing to just offer, from a basketball perspective, why would you not give this offer was the question. But quoting Annie here, according to multiple league sources, the Sky's decision not to offer their leading scorer was tied to locker room issues and an overall concern that re-signing her would negatively impact free agency. Pretty scathing off rip, frankly, in what everyone I feel like kind of thought, but to have it sourced now and everything, and Annie's been very trustworthy and has built this up at this point.
Play the hits of this story.
Let's get into it. Yeah. Well, first off, a quote directly from Pagliocca, the general manager from Chicago Sky, and kind of a statement to the Sun-Times. Just to dive into it super quickly, Chennedy had an incredible season for us last year. She's extremely talented and is a player that can impact the game at the highest level in our league. We absolutely appreciate all she did for our team last year. However, we've made changes to our staff and will make changes to our roster. Those changes impacts Kennedy's fit on the team, so we want to give her the best opportunity as a free agent. Okay, so to kind of continue and going more into the league sources, I feel like this is like the real heart of the issue here is, according to multiple league sources, players were unhappy with the dynamic created in the locker room last year due to Carter's behavior, which went unchecked by former coach Teresa Weatherspoon. There was concern within the team regarding how re-signing Carter would impact the Sky's chances of landing other free agents. I mean, that's it right there. That is the hit of this article and the reason why. Again, I feel like we assumed, just based on the vibe checks of everyone else, based on just kind of what we had heard, even with kind of some of the stuff we were hearing on the down low. Andrew, for you, this article, like, what is the initial takeaway from it?
So as always, we have to do our media analysis of this, right? Who does that little graph serve? Who is likely to benefit from it, and what is the upshot of leaking that to a reporter, right? Jeff Pagliocca is quoted in this directly, and you can easily put someone on the record, and you can easily put someone behind background for, the harder stuff. It wouldn't shock me if he was one of those multiple sources. It is very clear that, this is the perspective of the front office. It's not necessarily the perspective of Teresa Weatherspoon. It's not the perspective of Chennedy Carter. I'm not even really sure if it's the perspective of the players here either. I feel like in what is effectively a post-mortem, looking at how we got here, I feel like if players are the ones giving you the information, there's going to be a little more specificity in the way of what exactly the issues were that created the culture that players did not like. With that said, if you trust your multiple sources, putting the onus on other players for being upset about Kennedy's alleged antics is noteworthy because that really only points to two people. And it puts, Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso both kind of in the crosshairs a little bit of trying to, figure out what were those end of season conversations between them and Jeff Pagliacca. Was there really that kind of, beef, between those rookies and between Kennedy? I don't necessarily think any of it is wrong or slanted. I think, the context is important in certain respects, but also, man, like if you had eyes, you saw it. I think Spoon, God bless her, worked really hard to put her arm around and protect Chennedy Carter. But there's limits to that. This goes all the way back to that first Fever press conference after the shove on Caitlin Clark, and the reporter is asking what to me are pretty run-of-the-mill journalistic post-game questions. They're slightly invasive, but saying, did you say anything to her? Did she say anything to you? And then Spoon kind of taking it upon herself to step in and be like, that's enough, and make this entire thing about pestering, badgering reporters and poor Chennedy Carter. This narrative has been out there in the public sphere since the beginning of the season. So it's fairly understandable that, the front office looked at that and was like, there's problems here, that we got to figure out. And if your coach is willing to die on a hill for a player like that, well, that's what happens. Sometimes you die on the hill. It's a bummer because I feel like Kennedy was turning a little bit of a corner. Again, I would have liked more specificity in the reporting of what the actual locker room antics were that turned off players. I'd like to know a little bit more specificity about what her actual popularity in the league is with other teams. She has struggled to stay on rosters, whether it's the Atlanta Dream or the LA Sparks. And I think for the most part, a lot of people have chalked that up to it being a front office problem and they can't handle her or her personality. And this quote seems to indicate that league-wide there is a player issue with her as well. And if that is the case, then it makes a lot more sense why she's having as much trouble sticking in the league the way that she is, right? Yeah. So that's really my impressions of this. Is it gives us some understanding of why Spoon did not get the benefit of an additional year. It makes you wonder if, there was friction between Angel and Kennedy or Camila and Kennedy. And it also, makes you wonder how much of the lack of popularity around her as a presence is driven by coaches in front office and how much of it is driven by the players themselves not wanting to have to deal with the bullshit. She is an immensely talented player. She's one of the better guards in the league when she is doing it right. But, in a lot of ways, we look at someone like a Kiyomi McMiller and, the discussion that we had here a little while back about, this is a kid who has time to right the ship and get it fixed. Chennedy Carter's running out of that time. She's 26 years old now, and this is a hard league to break into, a hard league to maintain. I know there's money to be made in China, and she is absolutely cooking everybody over there. But when you are as good as she is, you should and need to be in the W. And if it's your personality that is creating those kinds of problems, at some point it can't continue to be everybody else. And that's not to say that two things can't be true here, right? It can still be true that she gets a smaller and tighter leash than other people. But it can also be true in the same respect that she doesn't do a lot to help herself in that respect either. So, it was illuminating. It gave us a portion of the picture. I think we're going to find out more of the full picture when we figure out whether or not teams want to take her on in free agency. Because I'll tell you this, if we hit the end of next month and she doesn't have a team, it's going to tell you a lot. From players, personnel, to coaches, to front office. we're going to find out a lot here very, very, very soon.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, realistically, you're looking at 3 teams out of 13 that you're not returning to more than likely. So that already dwindles down the already small pool of, opportunities of place to sign with this for Kennedy. And to your point, it's time the leash isn't getting any longer right now. And it's crazy because like coming off of this season that she just had, where she was probably at worst top 5 guard in the league, question mark, like top 6, like something like in that realm, when like somewhere in there, like in the top. The fact that she's in the top anything is and we're having this discussion, and so clearly Chicago wants to turn the page on whatever happened last year. It's a lot in that way, and frankly, like thinking of places like, okay, where next? In the hypothetical, that is, I mean, the next step to this, because she is an unrestricted free agent. She can go wherever she wants. I'd say the first thing that comes to mind is Las Vegas, in the sense of like they could use some backup guards. They could, if Kelsey Plum is on the way out, they might need a little bit more shot creating on the perimeter, and you might feel confident that you can rein this in, whatever is happening. If you feel like you have the confidence in the culture that you have set in Vegas to do that, and especially if Becky obviously is very close with Teaspoon, there is that connection there as well. So like if Teaspoon is someone, not even say, I know people have been talking about like Spoon being on the Aces staff, which isn't impossible still right now. I don't think they fit the whole staff, but I wouldn't guess that's happening. But we obviously know the connection between Becky and Spoon. And so like I feel like if there was anyone that was going to like be the extension of Spoon right now from a head coaching perspective, Becky Hammon is the obvious choice there, in that sense. But
you read my mind, because the one thing I was going to say after you mentioned the Aces piece was that is completely dependent on whether or not Spoon and Kennedy still have a good relationship after this. And look, maybe they do. I mean, maybe the response from the both of them leaving Chicago was, this is a Sky ownership problem, or this is another player problem. And if that's the case, I don't see why Spoon wouldn't or couldn't say to Becky, if anybody can figure this kid out from a headspace perspective, you can. And if any teammates can rein her in, it's Asia Wilson, the undisputed best player in the world right now, who Tyler Marsh on our show said is literally the best teammate and hardest worker he's ever coached. And Sydney Colson, who, for all the jokes and shit we make about Sid Colson, like there's a reason she's on a roster. She can get people lined up in a way that they need to get lined up. So maybe, but a lot revealed here. Lot revealed here. But I still want more. That's the
Oh yeah, I mean, always. Us. Ethically messy. That's us.
That's fair.
Before we move on, the funniest outcome would be Erica Wheeler leaving, and
that's not going to happen.
No, I'm just saying. In case it does happen, I just had to throw it out into the ether.
I know you want to wish cast that because like that's like the Marina Mabry, Dejanay Carrington becoming teammates in Connecticut type thing. But
it's
I don't.
I think to the Lakers.
No shit. That's about as oil and water as you can get, I think. But what a uniting moment for America that would be.
Oh, right? That would be. Oh, the get along shirt would be crazy.
Yeah, you thought this and Caitlin Clark get along shirt with her and AB was a thing. The Chennedy Carter, the CC by CC get along shirt is going to be bananas if that were a thing. But I'm going to put the odds there at around plus 10,000.
Yeah, don't think that's going to happen. But to your point, I'm excited to figure out if we learn more. And frankly, that learning more might just be, does Chennedy Carter end up on a roster? Like that really might just be our next like kind of like milestone piece of information, because I think that will shine a light on the perspective on her within the league, and from a player perspective, from a organizational perspective, and also even a potential perspective on kind of what the league deems with Chicago in a way, and if they felt like the leaf was turning enough. And obviously Chicago hasn't been, the best organization across the WNBA when it comes to handling different things or investment. Like others, the list kind of goes on with Chicago. So even potentially organizations being like, we know what's going on over there. And even deeming it, it's kind of similar to what you were saying with Spoon and Kennedy deeming it an organization problem, potentially, hypothetically. I can even see other organizations in the W taking that same angle with it. So again, that might be our next. It might just be a month until we find that out about kind of our next kind of piece of information like that. But I'm very interested in this story. Obviously, the cores and the players that have been cored has been a big piece, but this might be our most kind of intriguing storyline of a player as we go into this offseason.